You got a brain, right? But an INFJ's brain, that's a different animal. It's not louder, not faster in the obvious way. It doesn't flex for attention. It hums, like a souped-up supercomputer buried under a monastery constantly crunching data, weaving invisible threads, connecting dots you didn't even know were related. It sees patterns while everyone else is still arguing over facts. And let us get one thing straight before we go any further. This INFJ about being mystical, deep, or spiritually aesthetic for Instagram. That's bullshit. This is about raw cognitive architecture. INFJs don't think in straight lines. They don't move from A to B to C. They absorb the entire terrain at once: history, intention, emotional undercurrents, unspoken motives, and then quietly position themselves where the outcome is already decided. While others debate moves, INFJs map consequences. While others react, INFJs anticipate. And while others think they're competing, the INFJ has already walked the end of the maze and left breadcrumbs on the way back. In this video, we're tearing down the engine of the INFJ mind, not to romanticize it, not to mythologize it, but to expose why trying to outthink it is a fool's errand. Not because INFJs want power, but because power keeps finding them anyway. If you're an INFJ, this may feel like someone finally naming what you've always known but never said out loud. If you're not, this might explain why one of them has quietly unsettled you without ever raising their voice. So stay with me, breathe, and if any of this hits a nerve, drop a comment, share your story. I read them, I reply. And if this kind of deep-cut truth speaks to you, subscribe. We go further than surface-level bullshit around here. Now, let's talk about the web. 1. They don't think in lines, they see the whole damn map. Most minds walk roads. INFJ minds hover. While the world teaches you to think step by step, INFJs are wired to perceive systems. They don't just see events. They sense trajectories. Not just actions, but inevitabilities. It's like standing on a mountain while everyone else is arguing at the crossroads below. You call it intuition. They experience it as pattern recognition stacked on emotional memory stacked on foresight. An INFJ can walk into a room and feel the story already unfolding. Who's lying? Who's afraid? Who's about to implode? Not because they're psychic, but because the human psyche repeats itself and INFJs remember the repetitions. This is the web mind. Every conversation becomes a node. Every emotion leaves residue. Every inconsistency gets logged not consciously, not obsessively, but inevitably. And here's the part that unnerves people. INFJs don't rush to conclusions. They let the map fill itself in. They wait until the picture locks. When they finally speak, it sounds like prophecy, when really it's just math done in the dark. Have you ever been told by an INFJ, "I knew this would happen," and felt exposed by how calm they were about it? That wasn't arrogance. That was recognition. They don't chase certainty. They live inside probability. This is why arguing with an INFJ feels useless. You're presenting points. They're seeing outcomes. You're defending a position. They're watching the structure collapse behind it. And the wildest part? They rarely explain the whole map because they know most people can't see it anyway. They don't need to win. They already understand. 2. Emotional X-ray vision meets supercomputer processing. INFJs don't just think you feel them thinking. Their emotional intelligence isn't soft, it's surgical. They can read micro-expressions, tonal shifts, pauses that last half a second too long. They sense when your words and your nervous system are out of sync. This isn't empathy as kindness. It's empathy as data intake. They absorb emotional information the way a machine absorbs code, and then they run simulations. If I say this, what happens? If I stay silent, what shifts? If I leave, what collapses? This is where people underestimate them. You think their compassion makes them fragile. But compassion, when combined with foresight, becomes leverage. INFJs understand pain deeply because they've lived inside it and survived. That gives them an edge that isn't loud, but it's relentless. They know how people break. They know how people feel. And they know the difference between the two. That's why manipulating an INFJ almost never works. They feel the distortion before the lie even lands, and once you've been read that deeply, there's no undoing it. 3. Decoding the architecture that makes them impossible to outthink. Here's the truth no one really tells you because it's uncomfortable, and because it dismantles a lot of modern myths about intelligence. INFJs are playing a completely different game. While most minds are trained to optimize for dominance, speed, visibility, or social leverage, the INFJ mind is wired to optimize for alignment, not efficiency, not applause, alignment. The quiet, ruthless synchronization between inner values, long-term vision, emotional truth, and ethical direction. Every choice has to fit. Every move has to resonate through the whole system without fracturing it. Think of sacred geometry not because it's pretty, but because every angle depends on every other angle. Remove one piece and the structure collapses. That's how INFJs experience decision-making. Nothing is isolated. Nothing is accidental. This creates a kind of focus that unnerves people because INFJs don't rush. They don't lunge at opportunity. They don't chase momentum just because it's moving. They pause. They observe. They let patterns repeat until the underlying law reveals itself. And while the world mistakes that stillness for hesitation, something far more dangerous is happening underneath. They are calibrating. When an INFJ finally commits, it's never impulsive. It's the result of 1,000 internal checks. You never saw ethical filters, emotional forecasts, long-range consequences mapped out years ahead. They've already walked the failure paths. They've already mourned the losses. They've already tested the integrity of the choice against who they refuse to become. So when they move, it feels sudden to you, but to them, it's overdue. This is why INFJs seem slow until they're suddenly unstoppable. They don't waste energy on chaos. They don't argue every point. They don't correct every wrong. They don't fight every battle. They conserve their psychic resources the way a monk conserves breath. And when the moment finally demands action, they channel everything they've been holding back into a single, precise strike, purpose sharpened into inevitability. You can't outthink that. You can outmaneuver someone who isn't reacting to you in real time, but to a future you haven't even imagined yet. INFJs aren't playing chess while you're playing checkers. They're studying the psychology of why games are played at all. And here is the part that really messes with people. INFJs aren't in a hurry to win. They've already made peace with patience. They trust timing more than force. They trust coherence more than control. So while others exhaust themselves proving intelligence, INFJs quietly embody it until the moment arrives when their move feels less like a choice and more like destiny clicking into place. And by then, thinking faster won't save you. 4. Not magic, a web of thought, pattern, and purpose. Call it intuition if you want. That's the word people reach for when they don't understand the machinery. INFJs experience it as responsibility. Because seeing more isn't a gift you get to enjoy casually, it's a burden you're asked to carry with integrity. When patterns show themselves, INFJs don't get the luxury of pretending they didn't notice. Once the threat appears, it pulls. Once the truth surfaces, it demands reckoning. They don't enjoy seeing what others miss. It's not flattering. It's exhausting. It feels like walking with a lantern through thick fog while everyone else insists the sun is blazing. You point out the cliff ahead and people laugh until they're already falling. And the INFJ? They keep walking anyway. Not because they want to be right, but because stopping would mean betraying what they know. This is the web. Their mind doesn't operate in single thoughts, it operates in interdependencies. Every idea connects to an emotion. Every emotion links to a memory. Every memory echoes into future consequence. Nothing exists alone. Nothing is random. Their mind is a loom. Thoughts become threads. Threads become meaning. And meaning to an INFJ is never abstract. Meaning isn't something to admire, it's something to answer. Once they understand why something is broken, unjust, misaligned, or false, neutrality becomes impossible. That's the part people forget. INFJs aren't passive philosophers floating above reality. They're builders operating from depth. When pushed, when values are violated, when truth is distorted, when people are harmed, they don't explode. They solidify, quiet, intentional, unavoidable. They don't announce change. They architect it. And by the time others notice the shift, the foundation has already been reset. 5. Why competing with an INFJ's mind is a losing game. You can't beat a map by arguing with the road. That's the mistake people make. They think INFJs are engaging on the surface level, debating opinions, exchanging ideas, negotiating positions. But INFJs aren't fighting for the road. They're holding the terrain. INFJs don't seek to dominate you. They don't crave hierarchy. They don't hunger for victory. But if you try to dominate them intellectually, emotionally, psychologically, you're already behind. Not because they're superior, but because they've already accepted complexity while you're still trying to simplify it enough to control. They've made peace with paradox, with contradiction, with the fact that two opposing truths can exist at the same time. That alone puts them out of reach. They don't need applause to validate their thinking. They don't need control to feel secure. They don't need consensus to move forward. They need coherence. And once they have it, once their inner world clicks into alignment with their outer direction, they move with terrifying calm. No flailing, no scrambling. Just momentum that feels less like ambition and more like gravity. They move like fate with a conscience. Not ruthless, not reckless, but utterly committed. Competing with that isn't a challenge, it's a misunderstanding of the battlefield. So here's the question, not dropped out of nowhere, but earned through everything we just walked through together. What would happen if you stopped trying to think faster and started thinking deeper? INFJs don't live on the surface of life. They can't. Their minds won't allow it. They dive. They map emotional undercurrents. They trace meaning across time. And when they return to the surface, they're changed quieter, heavier, clearer. Not because depth is easy, but because it's unavoidable. If you're an INFJ, I genuinely love to hear your experience. Does this feel familiar? Does it finally put language to something you've carried silently for years? Something you've never quite been able to explain without being misunderstood? Leave a comment. Truly, I read every one, and I reply like a human, not a bot. And if you're not an INFJ, but someone just came to mind while listening, maybe now you understand why they've always felt a little different, a little ahead, a little hard to pin down. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you want more soul-level truth like this. And remember, some minds don't walk straight lines. They see the whole damn map.